An account of the holy baptism of the martyrs in the 6th century. Summary of baptism in the 6th century. The Council of Ilerda, in Spain, establishes various canons or rules against the Anabaptists and those baptized by them, forbidding to eat with them. 1 Peter, and his companion Zoroas defend Anabaptism. The followers of Donatus again cited, and excused in various things. About A.D. 525, the King of France, those of the Roman Church again found themselves in great embarrassment with regard to the so-called Anabaptists. The matter rose to such a pitch that it was thought well to assemble a council against them, as had been done by Pope Felix, A.D. 487, at Rome. Accordingly, the Second Council against the Anabaptists was convened, not at Rome, as the first, but at Ilerda, in Spain, to which there assembled, as was usually the case, many of the bitterest papistic bishops in order to extirpate, or at least check, the heresy, as it was called, who made a number of rules and laws, not only against the Anabaptists, but also against those who, having separated from the Roman Church, had been rebaptized by them, of which rules, among others, the following are noted. Canon 9. Concerning those who through transgression have been rebaptized, and have fallen without necessity, it is our will, that the statutes of the Nicene Synod be observed respecting them, which are considered to have been passed for such offenders, that they shall pray for 7 years among the catechumens, and 2 years among the Catholics. Canon 14. Godly believers shall not eat with the rebaptized. The 13th canon of this synod, also given in the same place, we suspect has been misquoted, however, as it does not apply here, we leave it in its own merit. That the 14th canon, however, which speaks only of the rebaptized, concerns the so-called Anabaptists, translates this canon thus: the clergy and believers shall not partake of meals with the Anabaptists. From this it can be seen in what detestation, yea, abhorrence, the so-called Anabaptists in the time past, were held by the Romanists, inasmuch as they were not considered worthy to eat with, even as once the Samaritans, publicans, and sinners had been regarded by the Jews. It also is praiseworthy in them, that they, notwithstanding the anathema of the Pope and the councils, yea, regardless of persecution, suffering, and death, as shall be shown in the proper place, maintained and manfully defended their views. We know of nothing further that we could say of them, from authentic writers, but will commend them, as well as ourselves, to God and His grace. As regards the manner in which they were proceeded against, in subsequent times, as well as how they conducted themselves herein, we shall show in the proper time and place. About A.D. 538, it is recorded that at the time of Justin and Justinian, the Roman emperors, there were people, termed fanatics by their opponents, who brought over to them and persuaded the imperial councillors and ministers, that infant baptism should be abolished, against which the aforementioned emperors set themselves to prevent it. From whom M. Galenius quotes this, acknowledges that at that time there came forth many strange fanatics, he calls them fanatics, though they were far more pious teachers and Christians than Rulicius and Galenius, and reproved, from the ordinance of the baptism of Christ, the encroaching abuses of infant baptism, who prevailed on and persuaded the imperial councillors and ministers, that infant baptism should be abolished. But Justin, and other emperors would prevent the same by their authority and interdiction. He then relates, from the constitutions, laws, of the emperors, Justin and Justinian, in what the interdiction, or, at least, the decree, ordained by these emperors respecting this matter, consisted, from which it can be seen, that not only was infant baptism rejected and condemned by those contemptuously called fanatics, but that even by the adherents of the Roman Church it was not looked upon as a command, but merely as a matter which was permitted, though at other times again, through the decrees of popes and councils, it exceedingly prevailed. In the meantime, it is gratifying to us, that even our opponents, who were strenuous advocates of infant baptism, I mean M. Rulicius and M. Galenius, confess that also at that time, about A.D. 538, there were persons who sought to abolish infant baptism, from which it appears that the troth of baptism upon faith could not be suppressed to such an extent that it did not, according to opportunity, manage to raise its head, and that, on the other hand, the error of infant baptism did not triumph to such a degree that it did not have its opponents when opportunity offered. Thus blooms the rose among thorns. God remains faithful to His promises. Psalms 33:4. Christ is with His church even unto the end of the world. Matthew 28:20. About A.D. 548, or 550, it is related, that 1 Peter, as well as 1 Zoroas, defended Anabaptism, but as to how and in what manner it was done, whether they rejected infant baptism, or whether they recognized no other baptism than that upon faith and administered in their own church, or otherwise, of this I find no other account than that recorded in Baptist History page 472, from Nicephorus, where it is said, Nicephorus writes, Peter, bishop of Apamea in Spain, and Zoroas, a Syrian monk, defended Anabaptism. A.D. 586, long since, namely, for the year 317, we cited Donatus, and showed, that he was a very learned bishop of Carthage, a native of Numidia, and that he taught that the Pope and his adherents did not have a Christian church, and, what he says about the water of baptism, is somewhat obscure, and hence every one may judge for himself, but that which he remarks about the bread of the supper, is clearer consequently, no true baptism, and hence held that those who had been baptized in the Roman Church needed to be rebaptized, saying that there was only one church, one baptism, one faith, one gospel, and that no children should be baptized, but only believing adults who desired baptism. At first almost all Africa adhered to him. This doctrine, however, did not die with him, seeing mention is made of his followers much later, namely A.D. 586, that they at that time, under the leadership of 1 Peter, Bishop of Apamea, rebaptized those who had been baptized by the Orthodox, or Catholic Church. Note, the followers of Donatus, of whom we speak here, have of old been severely accused by their opponents of gross errors, tyranny, etc., but are acquitted thereof by other celebrated authors. H. Bullinger compares them throughout to the Anabaptists, or as he calls them Baptists, saying, here our Baptists again disclose their ignorance, when they teach that no one should be compelled to that which is good, or to the faith, and, continuing, he says, they resemble the ancient Baptists, the Donatists, in every respect. These, he writes further, were of the opinion, that heretics should be allowed to live without restraint and with impunity in their faith, that is, without persecution or bloodshedding. They were opposed by Augustine. As to the accusations formerly brought against their faith as well as their life, these have been refuted by several prominent authors. It would be desirable, writes P. J. Twisk, if we ourselves had their writings, doctrines, and deeds, for, if it is true, that they resemble the Baptists in every respect, and are not willing that any one should be compelled in matters of faith. It is therefore sufficiently, as Bullinger says, evident, that they were unjustly accused. An account of those who suffered in the 6th century, summary of the martyrs of the 6th century. The oppression of the Church and the servants of God, under Granus, son of the King of France, is noticed, for the year 562, then, in the margin, mention is made of 40 Christian peasants, who suffered under the Longobards, however, for certain reasons, they are not absolutely accepted. After this, for the year 566, other 40 persons are mentioned, the most of whom were put to death with the sword, because they would not commit idolatry, or forsake Christ. In the margin an explanation is given with reference to this, and they are recognized by us as true martyrs. Of various severe persecutions instituted in and about this time, against the Christians in many kingdoms, principalities, provinces, and countries, by Jews, heathen, and false or apostate Christians, of which we shall briefly point out the principal ones. We have counted from Abraham Melanus alone, besides from many ancient writers referred to by him, who have more fully recorded the martyrdom of this time, 15 persecutions in this century, which were raised most vehemently against the Christians, in various countries. The oppression suffered by the Church and the servants of God, under Granus, the son of the King of France A.D. 562. That believers and the leaders of the Church of God had to suffer great oppression at this time, our beloved brother and co-worker in Christ, P. J. Twisk, deceased, in his time, signified to his contemporaries with these words, about this time, 562, the churches and the servants of God were greatly vexed by Granus, the wicked son of the King of France. About 40 pious Christians seized by the Longobards in Italy, and most of them put to death with the sword, for refusing to commit idolatry. A.D. 566. Shortly after the death of the peasants just spoken of in the margin, as the heathen Longobards, according to their custom, were offering to Satan the head of a he-goat, about 40 meek and pious Christians were apprehended. When their captors, in honor of Satan, had gone round their sacrifice, consecrated it by their sorcerous incantations and conjurations, and had bowed their heads before it, and worshipped it, they wanted to constrain the captive Christians to worship with them this head of the he-goat. But most of the Christians, preferring to die and strive for life immortal, rather than to live and worship the idol, refused to bow their heads, which they had always bowed in honor to God their Creator, before a vain and perishable creature.